Again, thanks for being here this morning. We're going to be looking at the story of Nabal. I'm going to say Nabal. I'm going to say Nabal and Abigail and their view of David. And if you haven't looked at that story, it is pretty fantastic. So 1 Samuel 25, if you want to go ahead and open your Bible there. We will begin there in just a second. And I also had a printout of kind of the lands we've been talking about the last few weeks. So I just made a map of it so you'd have it handy. It kind of makes it easier for me to kind of relate to where we're at if I can see that. And I had a great printout this morning and it's laying on my desk. So there you go. Bummer. Okay, so 1 Samuel 25, story of contrasting views of Nabal and Abigail. And so we'll look at that this morning. And all of this account happens in the 25th chapter. And so hopefully you had an opportunity to look at that. We'll talk about that this morning. So before we begin, Nick, would you lead us in prayer, please?
Almighty God, we're so thankful for the opportunity to come out here this morning to sing songs to you, God, to worship you and study your word. We're so thankful for another day you've given us, God, for all the many blessings you poured out upon us. But most of all, thankful for Jesus, God, the sacrifice he made for us, and the grace of salvation that comes through him, Lord. We pray that as we study more about David, God, we can apply to become better servants of yours and also be people after your own heart, God. We just pray that you will let us put aside the worldly things for a bit and open our hearts and minds to the word we're about to read. In your son's holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. So as we're trying to look at these different characters in David's life, so I mean this is about David and looking at how others view David. And so we've been through several interesting characters, and this is one that I'm sure I've read many times, but I'd kind of I guess glossed over. But this Abigail, she's pretty fantastic. If you ladies have not spent a lot of time studying about Abigail, you've kind of missed something, because there's a story here that's just pretty fantastic. And Nabal, if anybody in here's got the disposition and attitude of Nabal, you got a little work to do. You've got a little work to do, because these are two very, very, very contrasting folks. And what is their relationship? Husband and wife. And it would lead you to think, why in the world would she marry him? Anybody got a thought on that?
He was rich.
Opposites attract. Miss Carol said he was very rich. And then the real answer may be, it may have been an arranged marriage, and they didn't have a choice in that, as was very common in that day. But he was very rich, Miss Carol, and that's very interesting. I've already started now. My dad taught me a lot of things, but one that he taught me that I remember that is not a good thing when talking about marriage, it may have been part of this, was you marry for money and learn to love. He said that, didn't he, Mom? Yeah. So hopefully that wasn't what happened here, but that came to mind when I was thinking about these two characters. So,
Also, Mickey,
yes.
Lavelle was he come from a prominent line.
Okay.
Their ancestors, so, he was not a good character, but richness was not all of them.
Okay, Miss Carol says that Nabal came from his lineage was good. So not only was he rich, his lineage was good, so it wasn't like he was just an outcast that somehow had made a lot of money. So let's I'll tell you what, just 1 Samuel 25, most of these verses are there, so let's look at those as we start this, and I'll read the first 2 or 3 to kind of get us started. It says in verse 1, Then Samuel died, and the Israelites gathered together and lamented for him, and buried him at his home in Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. My version says Paran, other versions may say Maon. And that's kind of why I gave everybody a little map there. You can see where Ramah is at, which is up north of Jerusalem on the map. And this Maon is in the south of Judah, and Carmel is right next to it. And so traveled pretty far south. So we're in the southern part of Judah here. And so that's where David and his men have gone to. So again, we've talked about this a lot. Why is David traveling so much? He's running from Saul. You know, Saul's after him. Saul would like to kill him very much. So David is on the run. And how many men does David have with him? He's got about 600. So he's got about 600. And we haven't talked about this, but are these are reputable folks he's got with him? You might remember that? No, it says most of them, I don't have the verse, but in one of the chapters it says most of them were people that had debts and had problems, and somehow David attracted these in the wilderness, and they're not what you would classify as the most or the best kind of folks. But anyway, it's David's army, and they're traveling and trying to stay away from Saul, and now they're in the very south part of Judea there. Verse 2, Now there was a man in Maon, so we know where we're at here, whose business was in Carmel, and the man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. So, very rich guy, and evidently he's got a large flock of animals, and he's finally the time of the year where he's shearing the animals. Does anybody know anything about shearing sheep and this time of year, and anything about what this meant in this culture? Well, the references I looked at said it was a big deal. It was almost the animals they would sell that wool, and so it was a very important time. They'd waited a long time. They'd taken care of these animals, and now it was time to get some profit from it. So the shearing was a big deal, and hopefully they would profit from that. So it's that time of year, and this is going on in Carmel, and verse 3, the name of this man was Nabal, and the name of his wife was Abigail, and she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance. But the man was harsh and evil in his doings. He was the house of Caleb. So we've got as we said, we've got Nabal, and we find out later what does his name actually mean? Fool. He's a fool. You're foolish. You're an obstinate man, as we find out here, and a foolish man, Nabal. Somehow he got rich, but he's a foolish man. And Abigail, anybody know what her name meant?
My father's happiness.
Again?
My father's happiness.
My father's happy. Joy of the father. I had joy of the father. There was 2 or 3, but directly the opposite. Her husband's name, if you call somebody a Nabal, you're calling him a fool. And if you call somebody Abigail, there's the joy of the father. So totally different, contrasting people. And how they're married is interesting. But we got this time of year when we got the sheep gathering together for the shearing, and David hears about it. And so what does he do? What's David's idea here? What's he need?
He needs some provisions for a festival.
Okay, he needs some provisions. It says something about a feast, and so he needs some provisions for this day. So what has he and his men been doing that makes him think Nabal ought to be kind to him and give him some whatever he needs?
Provided coverage for them.
Say again?
Provided protection to all.
Okay, so for a period of time, David and his men, while they're in the wilderness, have provided protection for Nabal and his men and all this herd here. So David, there's a verse that says he has been a wall. Let's see, what verse is that? Verse 16. I'll read 14 through 17, kind of give you the idea. So now one of these young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, look, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything, as long as we accompanied them when we were in the field. So saying, when David and his guys were with us, they took care of us. There was none of our animals went missing. None of the raiders of that time came through and got any of our animals. In verse 16, there was a wall to us both by night and by day. All the time we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what you will do. So there's the reason that David thinks that Nabal should be generous to him. I've protected this 400 animals, this flock you've got, and now you're sharing them, and then please give us some provisions here to help us during this time. So, sound like a reasonable request?
Yes, especially because he said what you think.
He didn't ask
He didn't ask
for a lot of stuff.
No.
He said whatever you have on hand, so he didn't ask for anything, any
Yeah.
special trouble or anything.
Yeah, so whatever you have on hand, please provide. Now, he did send 10 guys to get it, so he must have thought it might be something nice. I've been really good. This would be great if it's, if you got enough to take care of, well, there's 600 of us out here, but he sends 10 guys. And Nabal's reaction to this is what?
He refused David.
He totally refused, didn't he?
Yes.
He didn't even know who he was. Like, how do I even believe you?
Yeah, verse 10. Somebody want to read verse 10? Kind of gives the attitude that, or verse 10 and 11.
Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Shall I then take my bread and my water, and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men whom I know not whence they be?
Okay, so Nabal's reaction is not at all what David expected. He didn't really ask for much, but he did expect Nabal to treat him a little more kindly. And then Nabal, living up to his name, as the fool said, who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? And then verse 11, shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to men that I don't even know where they come from? So what do those two verses tell us a little bit about Nabal?
He has God disease.
He's got an eye problem. He's the personal pronoun I is there. He's very prideful, and it's my bread and my water and my meat. So he thinks all those things are his. Certainly, that God hasn't been part of that at all. So he's got an eye problem. What else?
He was
Very
insulting.
selfish.
Very selfish. Very selfish. Ms. Carroll said very
Insulting.
insulting of David.
Yes.
How would he not heard of that?
Yes, yes.
That is,
Yeah.
I mean, his wife knows him, sounds like she's known him forever. And he's not, I mean, is he just that ignorant, doesn't know the name? Or he's just refusing to accept that maybe this is the David he's kind of, I don't know. That's what really baffles me is his lack of knowledge, whether he wanted to serve him or not, of not hearing his name.
Yeah, but to your point, we do know that later Abigail even knows that David's going to be the next ruler. So certainly his name is out there. Yes, sir.
Well, the fact that he mentions that so many men are breaking, or servants nowadays are breaking away from their masters, he may know David. He may be loyal to Saul, and he's charging, David, you're a nobody. Saul's the real king. Why would I help you?
Okay.
It could be that he is that's tongue in cheek when he says, who is
Yes.
Jesse?
So the point is, he may be a follower of Saul, and he certainly knows who David is, but he's trying to say, I really don't know who David is. We do know that Abigail certainly knew who David and who Saul was, and we'll look over later, but in verse 29, she kind of insinuates that, doesn't mention Saul by name. It says, yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life. So certainly she's talking about Saul there. So, Saul was certainly known, and it may have been the reason, as Kyle points out, that he acted the way he did. So one of our questions become pretty interesting here. The chapter before, David's got the opportunity to kill Saul, got him, and doesn't do it. And why does he say he didn't do it, by the way? He's the Lord's anointed. I cannot kill the Lord's anointed. Would he have, forget what that part of it, but with Saul after him, and Saul certainly would like to kill him and has said it many times and has thrown spears at him and everything else, wouldn't you think that if anybody he would like to get rid of, it would have been Saul? But he didn't. We know a couple of times that he has the opportunity to kill Saul, but he does not do that because Saul is the anointed, but Saul has certainly treated him bad and is chasing him all over the place here. And now we get to this guy, Nabal, and he just kind of insults David. And what's David ready to do?
Strap on his swords.
He's ready to strap on his swords and go do what?
Kill all the men of his, Nabal included, of his household.
Okay, go and kill Nabal and all the males of his household. So what do we think about David here? What's that reaction? What's happened here?
Sounds like King Saul.
Sounds a little bit like Saul.
Also kind of reacting like Nabal, just fury and that's it, you're not gonna tell me otherwise.
Right. And so it's this is one of the flaws of David.
Yeah.
He's not perfect, and his anger at this point is just a little bit out of control. Yes, sir.
Hopefully, I hope I'm not reading too far into it, but David really comes off sounding kind of like he's got a little bit of a scheme running here. I'm providing you protection, it's time to pay up. We can see something like that today. It's kind of like a shakedown of sorts. If you don't pay me, I'm going to stop being this protection to you. So there's a couple aspects in this that maybe depending, we don't have, a lot of information. We can choose to view this as David just being kingly and protecting the people of his kingdom. But also it could have been that David was, he's running with a rough crew.
Yeah.
And maybe those guys are doing some things that aren't quite right, and he's just kind of there in the midst of it.
Yeah. So there's a couple of points that one is thought out in some of the things that I read, that it wasn't uncommon for folks to protect somebody else's animals or flock or whatever, and then expect to be compensated in some way. So was this part of what David, one of the reasons that he and his men had took care of these folks and their animals, was hopefully that there would be some kind of pay to be had. But we see here that Nabal certainly didn't feel that way about it, and acted like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't even know who you are, and why are you here? So So this I guess, which question is it that asks that? Let's look at number one. Just what is the simple request of David to Nabal in 1 Samuel 24, 4-9? And we've already said that was just provisions. And we see how Nabal reacted. And how would you describe David's request? And we said, again, it was minimal. He wasn't, whatever you can have, please feed us with that. How would you describe Nabal's response to these men? And we've kind of talked about that. The question that was, number 3, what does David have what does David have the opportunity to do to Saul in this chapter that he refuses to do? And we've talked about that already. Yeah, when Nabal provokes David, what is he ready to do? So what is the difference? That was one of the questions. So what is the difference in the two? Why I'm not going to kill Saul, he's been terrible to me, but yet Nabal just kind of insults him and his men, and he's ready to kill them all.
Hey, Mindy, I have a hard time with this one a little bit, because, as much as I keep asking myself, is would God have been mad at David if this went through? I have a hard time answering that yes, because God wiped Nabal out 10 days later himself. So the reactionary of it, I think, is the bad part, where he was just got a reaction. But we're also not sure that David didn't take this as an insult to God as well, the way he's acting.
Yeah.
In that, and obviously David's trying to, like you said, align with God's thought. That's why he didn't kill Saul. So I do think it's very much reactionary that David did that. But I keep back to my thinking, would God have been upset with that? I don't know that answer. I'm trying to rationalize that maybe God been upset with me if he did take out Nabal in this instance.
But not only was he going to take out Nabal, he was going to take out all the others. That gets a little different territory. Yes, sir.
I can't help but wonder if, verse 1 is so seemingly out of context to the rest of the story. But I think it's really important to remember, one of God's chief mouthpieces just went off the board. Samuel has just died, and this is what happens directly after that. Right after that, David gets up and goes out into this wilderness, and we have this situation where you kind of wonder, it's really questionable. Just is what all's happening here? Is everything really what it should be? And I wonder if there is a chance where, if Abigail hadn't interceded the way she did, if David does do something that's really not glorifying to God, but yet because of this actions, God shows us I can take care of my own problems. I can take care of your problems. You control yourself the way that you're supposed to control yourself. So I wonder if that is anything related to this, that you have someone who has spoken God's word in the past. He's the one that anointed David, and now he's gone. David's living without him, and we have somebody that shows up that kind of gives him a reset.
Yeah.
Focus his mind back where maybe it should be.
Yeah. So Kyle, if you didn't, his point that he made was in the first verse of this 25th chapter talks about Samuel had died, and that he had anointed David, and it's just a difficult time for David, and then here this story occurs, and so maybe David's attitude isn't what it should have been because there's lots of things going on now, and certainly it isn't. Certainly, we if you read on through the account, Abigail shows up, and I think it's interesting that she hears the story, and what immediately does she do? Starting in verse 18.
She loads the donkeys.
She loads the donkeys, doesn't she? Abigail makes haste. That's the first thing, and that's said a couple of times about Abigail. So I think that's important. She took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys.
Yep.
So she acted immediately. And so she gathers up enough food to,
They had some resources.
had some resources.
That's a lot of stuff.
That is a lot of stuff. So as we've said, this is a rich family. And but does Nabal know she's doing this? No, he doesn't have an idea. And so she gathers up all this stuff and heads toward David and his men. And one of the accounts I read says David is leading his crew. You see his horse and the dust flying, and they're headed to Nabal. And here she comes over the hill with donkey and provisions, and puts the whole thing. And he looks, and she's a beautiful woman, and she's got all this stuff for my guys, and totally changes where this thing is headed. So this Abigail, pretty fantastic. And what is the first thing she says when she sees David?
She says on me.
Yeah, she says, it's on me. Don't be mad at my husband. It's all on me. Was that true? No. But that was just, in my mind, the heart that she had, that she didn't want that. I don't know that, I'm going to say this, I don't know that she really cared about Nabal so much, but all the other men there, she didn't want to see that whole group of men killed because of Nabal's foolishness. And so she says, it's on me. Take this out on me, which certainly it wasn't. This is in verse 24 and 25. So she fell at his feet. On me, my Lord, on me let this iniquity be, and please let your maidservant speak in your ears, and hear the words of your maidservant. Please let not my Lord regard this scoundrel Nabal. She's talking about her husband here, calls him a scoundrel. For as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my Lord whom you sent. I didn't see those guys that came in and asked this request. If I had things might be different. But please don't do what you're trying to do here. You haven't, as it says there, you haven't committed bloodshed or avenged yourself with your own hands. I think she's alluding to Saul there, perhaps. Please don't do this with Nabal. And very, very persuasive lady. Very, very persuasive. She makes her case and tries to make David understand that this is not good. And she even adds what will happen if he doesn't do this. Verse 28, please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my Lord an enduring house. And when she says my Lord, she's talking about David. For the Lord will certainly make for David an enduring house, because David fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man, talking about Saul, is risen to pursue you and seek your life. But the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God. And then an allusion perhaps to the Goliath story. And the lies of your enemy he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling. And it shall come to pass when all the Lord has done for my Lord according to the good that he has spoken concerning me, and has appointed you ruler over Israel. So, I mean, she really tells a great story here. You've not done anything wrong until this point. You're going to be the ruler of Israel, so don't commit this terrible mistake and go up here and kill Nabal and all of his guys. That is just not, God's not going to be pleased with that. And I think Kyle made the point. We don't know what would have happened to this story if Abigail had not showed up. Certainly it would have been way different, I think. So one of the questions, number 4. Think for a moment now about Abigail. In the verses below, note what you can learn from her character as we see her quickly responding to her husband's foolish words. So in 1 Samuel 25:3, what do we learn about Abigail there?
She was intelligent.
Okay, she was intelligent and she was beautiful. Pretty good characteristics there. What about 1 Samuel 25:18? What do we learn about her there?
Resourceful and prepared.
Resourceful and prepared? Yes, ready immediately. When she saw that something needed to be done, she didn't piddle around. She didn't think about it. And but immediately, it says, with haste, she gathered all this stuff together, took off toward David. So intelligent, beautiful, resourceful, quick decision maker. She's prepared. She's got a lot of stuff, and very, very crafty. She knows what she's doing. And
Probably not her first day doing this, if he was that foolish.
Okay.
It sounds like, she she knew exactly what to do, but she'd probably had to do it before.
Okay, so,
Moved over a lot of issues.
so Tara comments that if she's lived with this guy long, she's probably had to clean up his messes before and been through a lot of his issues before, so she's prepared to do this and she's ready to go. What about verse 30 and 31?
She's respectful of David.
She's very respectful of David and asked David to remember her when he had been successful. And did he remember her?
Yes.
How did he remember her?
He took her as his wife.
What?
Yeah, he married her. How quick after Nabal died did he marry her? I mean, do what? As soon as he heard about it. He said, man, that lady was beautiful and she brought all this food and she obviously knows how to get her hands on food and she also is very rich. And so David, as soon as he found out that Nabal was dead, he didn't fiddle around. He went and found Abigail.
Well, he'll learn to love her.
I think he did learn to love her, didn't he? This Abigail, great story. So what? So David relents. He doesn't do. He says, "I'm not going to do that," and he actually blesses Abigail in verses 32 and 33. Will somebody read those for me?
And David said to Abigail, Blessed be the Lord, God of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me. And blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, and haste keep me this day from coming to shed blood, and from the avenging myself with mine own hand.
Okay, so he blessed Abigail, and he said, and he blessed the Lord first. He said, "Thank the Lord for sending you." So he gives the Lord the credit for bringing Abigail into this. And blessed be your advice, because you gave me some great advice. And blessed be you, because you kept me this day from doing this that I had determined that I was going to do just because Nabal had insulted me. So Abigail, again, just the story of Abigail is just a great story and one that we ought to try to emulate as best we can.
It reminds me of the story of Rahab a little bit, especially if what Carl said is true, that Nabal was loyal to Saul, that she was loyal to God and faithful, and said, "Remember me when Nabal's household is destroyed, remember me."
Yes.
And kind of like Rahab, giving the spies advice, giving them provisions, and then saying, "I believe in your God, and when this city is destroyed, like God said, remember that I'm a faithful one here."
Okay, good point. Said to Tara, it reminds her a little bit of Rahab and the story of Rahab and how she had protected the spies and gave them provisions and later said, I want to be your God. I want your God to be my God. Kind of the same thing that we see here perhaps with Abigail, that when Saul's out of the picture, David, you're the king. I want to be part of your kingdom. Yes, sir.
Just to maybe further illustrate that same point, the servants, or when they talk about what David has done in the wilderness, they call him, he's been a wall to us. That's the same language that the Israelites used with God at the Red Sea.
Okay.
That the Red Sea became a wall to their enemies.
Okay.
So there is a sense where David has acted in a way to deliver them from their oppressors. And so it could be that Abigail sees him as, the Lord is with, of these two kings, of these two powers that are around me, God is with one and not with the other.
Okay, good point. Good point. Kyle said Abigail could have seen of these two guys, Saul and David, which one is on the Lord's side, and or which one's with the Lord. And certainly she realized that it was David, and certainly not Saul. So, verse 36. Abigail goes home. She goes to Nabal and immediately tells him the story.
When he sobers up.
No, as Michael says, when he sobers up, it says he comes home and he's having a big feast and he's drunk. Nabal was very drunk, it says, and his heart was merry, and so she waited till the morning, and she said, Nabal, here's the deal. And what did she tell him? It doesn't really say there, but what did she tell him?
In the morning, wasn't it?
In the morning, so what did she say?
I think she tells him everything that happened.
And-
how David was coming to kill him.
Yeah. And how did he react to that? Yeah. 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 We don't know for sure, but it scared him enough that something really bad happened to him, whether it's a heart attack or a stroke or whatever the situation. It says that, verse 37, so it was in the morning when the wine had gone from Nabal and his wife had told him these things, that you guys just about got killed. If it hadn't been for me, you would be dead. His heart died within him and he became like stone. And then it happened after 10 days that the Lord struck Nabal and he died. So there is didn't take long.
So Nikki.
Yes, ma'am.
He apparently knew who David was. He remembered
Okay?
because it scared him to death.
It did scare him to death. So Miss Carol's point is maybe he really did know who David was. He was just acting like he didn't, which I think is probably true. But he died. And verse 39, we've kind of already alluded to. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal and has kept his servant from evil. For the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal on his head. And David sent and proposed to Abigail to take her as his wife. So part of this story is about vengeance. When we read throughout the Bible that vengeance is of who? Vengeance is of the Lord's. And David was just about to go off the deep end here and take things into his own hand and kill a bunch of innocent people. And God did not allow that happen. But God had the final say with Nabal. And as David said there, God has taken this into his hands. And I didn't do it. And God did it. And thankfully, I'm not remembered for killing a bunch of innocent people. So, as always, God is in control. We're not in control.
It's interesting in that David recognizes a couple of times I would have been wrong. If one, I've been avenged by my own hand. Two, you think about what Nabal did. He insulted him. David lives under the period of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He is responding to an insult with nuclear war. It's
Yeah.
not proportionate at all.
Right. Yeah, Kyle's point. David has gone nuclear here. He's been insulted, and he hasn't taken it very well. And he insulted his family, insulted Jesse, and so he really loses his temper and loses his anger and wants to take vengeance in his own hands, and that is never a good idea. Yes, sir.
It's not a David for Nabal question or issue that I made her point. It's an Abigail, and she has an Esther moment. Esther chapter 4, verse 14. Just to sum that verse up, who knows whether there are coming to the kingdom for such a time as this? These opportunities that we all have. I mean, this is a lesson for me that I pull from this, other than just my attitude or my anger blowing up. If I see something that I might have an opportunity to sway one way or the other for better, I need to do it. I need to do it.
Yeah, great point. Great point. The lesson that Sam said he had gotten from this is Abigail. She had the opportunity to help out in this situation. It was about to explode, and it was going to be not a good situation for David. And she stepped in and was the intercessor there and mediated that thing. And so it turned out good. So what a great lesson for us today, that if we have the opportunity to diffuse something that we see is just ready to blow up and bad things could happen, then I think that we're called as Christians to do that. Yes, sir.
We've danced around it and said it specifically, but Abigail kept David from sinning.
Okay.
I mean, that, for whatever we might think about the reasons that David chased after her and married her, maybe she was beautiful, maybe she was rich, whatever.
She was.
I got,
Well, go ahead.
I'm sure there are a lot of beautiful rich women.
Okay.
And David married a few of them. But this one kept him from sinning.
Okay.
I mean, that, if you take a positive view of David, he says, I was getting ready to do something that was, he called it blood guilt, verse 33.
Okay.
At least in the English Standard. And she kept me from doing that, not by beating me over the head, but in a very respectful and kind way, brought my sin to my attention so I could correct it. That's valuable.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome wife.
That's why you married her.
I think that's
She knew that this was, to Michael's point, kept David from committing a sin. He was about to commit a terrible sin, as verse 33 says, and you kept me from it. So if we've got spouses like that who see that we're doing something that's not right and they correct us in that, then we're certainly blessed.
I just wonder if he went through with it, would he then been king?
Yeah. So the
Probably not.
question is, if he had done this and committed this bloodshed and killed all these people, would his story still be the same, and would he still be a king? And I doubt that. Yes, sir.
Well, to that question, he kills Uriah.
Yes.
And he has the opportunity to repent. And I wonder, how Nabal's story would go differently. Had he heard Abigail's words and instead of, causing him to fear, cause him to be brokenhearted. If maybe that story would have ended differently as well. We see similar things throughout the Bible, Judas and Peter.
Yeah, so this lesson I think was very interesting. These contrasting views and Abigail, and what a great heroine she is in this story, and how she diffused this whole situation the sin that David was about to commit, and what a great lady she was. All you ladies should aspire to that, and all us men should aspire to have Abigail's as our wives. So, thank you very much. Great story. Let's see. Wednesday we're in VBS, so it'll be next Sunday. We're back on lesson 8, the house of Saul and David, mislabeled scars. So that should be interesting. Thank you.